Sienna Hart disappeared from a rain-soaked Washington highway on the same night. She discovered that a dead man had been watching her for 3 years. The storm had swallowed most of the Olympic Peninsula by the time her silver sedan reached the coastal road. Rain battered the windshield, turning the world beyond it into a blur of black cedar trees, pale fog, and violent ocean waves. To her left, the forest rose like a wall. To her right, cliffs dropped toward the Pacific, where white water broke against the rocks far below. Sienna kept both hands steady on the wheel. Only the tightness in her jaw betrayed her fear. Beneath the lining of her coat rested a sealed envelope she had received that morning. There had been no return address, only her name written in handwriting she recognized immediately. Adrian Blackwood's handwriting. The same Adrian Blackwood who had supposedly died 4 months earlier when his car burned on an isolated mountain pass. Sienna had not opened the envelope. She had carried it through her workday, hidden it from the security cameras outside her apartment, and driven west without telling anyone where she was going. Every instinct warned her that opening it would pull her back into a world she had barely escaped. Then headlights appeared behind her. A black vehicle followed at a careful distance, matching every turn she made. It did not speed up or fall back. It simply remained there, patient and certain, as if the people inside already knew where the road would end. Sienna checked her phone. No signal. The highway narrowed beside a cliff, leaving no shoulder and no safe place to turn. A second black vehicle emerged ahead, blocking both lanes. The one behind her accelerated just enough to remove any possibility of retreat. She stopped before they could force her toward the edge. For masked men approached. Their movements were disciplined, almost military. One opened her door, while another disabled the dashboard camera. They did not strike her, threaten her, or tear through her belongings. They followed precise instructions, handling her as though even a bruise might anger the person waiting for her. That frightened Sienna more than violence would have. Random kidnappers made mistakes. These men did not. A blindfold covered her eyes before she was transferred into another vehicle. For nearly 2 hours, she counted turns, changes in road texture, and the rise in elevation. She heard coded radio updates, expensive engines, and the quiet obedience of men who feared the name behind their orders. Roman Blackwood. Adrian's older brother had spent months tracing missing money, corrupted surveillance files, and Adrian's final movements. Every trail had led to Sienna. To Roman, revenge was not an emotion. It was a debt inherited through blood. Yet Sienna had always known he would come for her. When the vehicle finally stopped, cold mountain air touched her face. The blindfold was removed outside an isolated stone estate overlooking a lake, so dark it reflected nothing. Guards stood beneath warm lights, silent and watchful, while security cameras followed her toward the entrance. High above them, Roman watched from an upper window, expecting to see panic. Instead, Sienna lifted her face and looked directly toward the glass, as though she knew exactly where he was standing. Minutes later, Roman entered the locked room and found her holding a photograph of Adrian taken 3 weeks after his funeral. Roman had buried his brother beneath frozen ground, but the photograph in Sienna's hand showed Adrian standing beneath summer sunlight 3 weeks later. Roman took the photograph without allowing his expression to change. He stood tall beneath the room's low light, dressed in a charcoal suit untouched by the storm outside. His dark hair was neatly combed, his movements measured, and his gray eyes carried the cold patience of a man accustomed to controlling every room he entered. Sienna watched his thumb pause over the date printed in the photograph's corner. That single hesitation revealed more than shock ever could. The Blackwood Empire had been built through generations of fear. Its legitimate shipping companies controlled routes along the Pacific coast, while hidden partnerships moved illegal cargo through private docks. Politicians accepted Blackwood donations, security firms answered to Roman's advisors, and powerful men disappeared whenever they threatened the family's interests. Roman had inherited that world willingly. Adrian had spent his life questioning it. Roman had been raised as a disciplined heir, trained to protect the family before himself. Adrian, younger and more idealistic, believed loyalty meant preventing the family from becoming monstrous. Their final meeting had ended with Adrian accusing Roman of protecting men who deserved to fall. Days later, Adrian's burned vehicle was discovered near a mountain pass. The remains inside were identified through his watch, dental records, and a medical report Roman had never thought to question. Grief had hardened to rage when investigators recovered Adrian's encrypted messages. Sienna's name appeared repeatedly. Roman later uncovered secret meetings between them, suspicious financial transfers, and connections to an organization that had challenged Blackwood territory. He concluded that Sienna had manipulated Adrian, stolen his trust, and delivered him to their enemies. Now the photograph threatened to tear that conclusion apart. Sienna offered no full explanation. Instead, she studied the cameras hidden near the ceiling and the narrow reflection in the window. Her caution carried a warning Roman understood but refused to accept. Someone inside his estate was watching them. He treated it as another deception and ordered his guards to search her clothing. They found the sealed envelope beneath her coat lining. Inside was only a blank sheet of paper. For the first time, Sienna's composure broke. Her face drained of color as she examined the empty envelope. Whatever Adrian had sent was gone, replaced before Roman's men took her. Roman wanted to believe she was acting, yet the evidence no longer abated his anger. His attention shifted to the bruises around her wrist. They were dark, uneven, and several days old. Someone had restrained her before his men ever reached the highway. Roman's security chief quickly blamed the marks on the abduction. Roman knew he was lying. Sienna then noticed a crest carved into the stone fireplace, a crowned raven surrounded by thorns. Her reaction was immediate. Adrian had discovered the same symbol on payments, hidden property records, and files connected to a secret organization operating within the Blackwood Empire. She made Roman understand that Adrian had not been running from him. He had been trying to save him. Roman rejected the idea, but his certainty had already fractured. Instead of sending Sienna underground, he ordered her moved to a guarded bedroom where he could watch everyone who approached her. That night, Roman opened his state security archive and discovered someone had entered Sienna's room hours before she arrived. The security footage should have been impossible. Roman watched a hooded figure enter Sienna's assigned room 6 hours before her arrival. The stranger remained inside for 11 minutes, yet no camera showed anyone leaving. There were no blind spots, no service passages, and no recorded system failure. Someone inside the estate had altered reality. Roman ordered a silent lockdown. Gates remained open. Guards followed their usual patrols, and no alarm was raised. If a traitor was hiding among his people, Roman intended to let them believe they were still invisible. Across the estate, Sienna studied the guarded bedroom with equal care. The carved ceiling beams, narrow corridors, and faded landscape paintings matched descriptions Adrian had once given her. She had never entered the Blackwood home, but parts of it felt disturbingly familiar. That knowledge had come from months of secret work. Sienna was a forensic archivist who restored damaged documents for private legal investigations. She could recover erased signatures, reconstruct burned ledgers, and identify when records had been deliberately altered. Adrian hired her after discovering inconsistencies in old Blackwood property files. What they uncovered was worse than theft. Money from companies under Roman's control had funded violent intimidation campaigns against immigrant-owned shops and struggling neighborhoods. Families were threatened, buildings damaged, and property values deliberately destroyed so shell companies could purchase the land cheaply. The victims had been selected because the men behind the scheme believed they lacked influence, protection, or the ability to fight back. Adrian wanted the operation exposed. Sienna helped him preserve copies, but both knew Roman might reject evidence that accused someone close to him. Power did not merely hide the truth. It trained powerful men to distrust anyone who revealed it. Roman entered her room before dawn and escorted her through the estate under the pretense of moving her again. Guards watched from a distance, unaware that he was testing her knowledge. Sienna recognized the western hallway immediately. At the library, she stopped beneath an antique map and pressed a concealed brass pin near the frame. A section of the wall shifted open. Behind it lay Adrian's hidden room. Maps covered one wall. Damaged recordings, coded ledgers, and photographs filled the shelves. Several files had been burned at the edges, as though someone had tried to destroy them in a hurry. Roman found surveillance photographs of himself spanning years. He appeared outside meetings, family funerals, private docks, and even his own bedroom balcony. Someone within his organization had been tracking him long before Adrian disappeared. Sienna located an empty slot in the central cabinet. The master file was gone. Roman finally understood that bringing her to the estate may not have captured a suspect. It may have delivered the last surviving witness directly to the traitor. His treatment of her changed. She was no longer merely a prisoner, though she was not free. Sienna saw grief beneath his anger, while Roman noticed she still protected Adrian's memory despite everything it cost her. Inside a coded ledger, they found a location marked with the day of Adrian's supposed death, a waterfall deep in the Quinault rainforest. Roman decided to go with Sienna and one trusted guard. Before leaving, he lifted a fresh fingerprint from Adrian's desk. It belonged to his uncle, Silas Blackwood. Then security reported that Silas had already vanished into the rainforest with a heavily armed team. Before sunrise, Roman, Sienna, and Mason Reed entered the Quinault rainforest without a convoy, backup vehicles, or protection Roman usually carried around him like armor. Ancient trees towered above the narrow trail, their trunks wrapped in thick moss. Cold mist drifted between the roots, and the distant roar of water grew louder with every step. Silas already had a head start, and Roman trusted neither the woman beside him nor the guard walking behind them. Sienna followed Adrian's coded map through tangled undergrowth until the trail ended at a waterfall spilling over a wall of black stone. Behind the rushing water, they found a narrow opening concealed by shadow. Inside the cave were waterproof containers filled with copied records. The first files exposed Silas's secret alliances with rival crime families. Together, they had used Roman's reputation to frighten immigrant families, pressure vulnerable neighborhoods, and seize valuable waterfront property through threats and manufactured violence. Roman had not ordered those crimes, but his name had made them possible. That truth struck harder than any accusation. Power could corrupt without permission when fear had already taught everyone to obey. A damaged recording revealed Adrian's plan to confront Roman. Yet the same recording showed that Adrian had questioned whether his brother would defend innocent victims or protect the Blackwood name. Roman felt the betrayal immediately. Sienna understood the deeper meaning. Adrian had not believed Roman was cruel enough to support Silas. He had feared Roman was loyal enough to excuse him. Another file destroyed what remained of Roman's certainty. The body recovered from Adrian's burned vehicle had belonged to an unidentified whistleblower. Adrian had survived the explosion, badly injured, and someone had moved him to a hidden medical facility. The documents named Sienna as the person who arranged his disappearance. Roman's anger returned with frightening force. She had watched him bury an empty coffin, while knowing Adrian might still be alive. Sienna did not defend herself with excuses. Adrian had demanded secrecy until conspiracy was exposed. Silas controlled Roman's communication, his guards, and parts of his intelligence network. Contacting Roman could have revealed Adrian's location. For the first time, Roman faced the possibility that his own empire had made him too dangerous to trust. Mason interrupted them after finding fresh footprints near the cave entrance. Someone had searched the containers recently. The master ledger was gone. A faint electronic pulse sounded beneath the stone floor. Roman recognized the device a second before it detonated. The blast tore through the cave. He threw himself over Sienna as rock and water crashed around them. Mason disappeared behind a wall of falling debris, while Roman pulled Sienna into a narrow underground passage. They crawled through darkness until the tunnel opened beside a freezing river. Sienna helped Roman toward the trees, then saw blood spreading across his coat. He had hidden the wound to keep them moving. In that moment, she no longer saw only the ruthless man described in criminal files, and Roman could no longer dismiss the woman who had repeatedly risked herself to preserve Adrian's truth. Branches moved ahead. Armed figures emerged from a forest wearing the crowned raven symbol from Adrian's hidden room. They lowered their weapons, and their leader revealed that Adrian Blackwood was alive, but had forbidden them from taking Roman to him. Adrian was alive in a hidden mountain sanctuary, yet his first act was not to welcome Roman. It was to order that his brother be kept outside. The armed group led them through pine forest toward a glacier-fed lake surrounded by snow-covered peaks. Restored cabins stood along the shoreline, their warm windows reflecting across the clear water. What had once been an abandoned settlement now served as a refuge protected from the world Roman controlled. The group's leader was Evelyn Cross, Adrian's former investigator. She confirmed that Adrian had survived the explosion, Although his injuries had left him weak, her distrust of Roman was immediate. To her, he was not merely a grieving brother. He was the head of an empire whose reputation had protected Silas's crimes. Roman remained beside the lake under armed guard, wounded and furious, while Sienna was taken inside. The sanctuary sheltered former Blackwood employees, community leaders, and families targeted by Silas. Some had lost shops after repeated vandalism. Others had been driven from their homes through threats designed to exploit their race, immigration status, or lack of political influence. Roman had seen their names and files. Now Sienna saw their faces. Adrian had spent months collecting their testimony and preserving evidence strong enough to survive public exposure. When Sienna entered the final cabin, she found him sitting near a window. Adrian was thinner than she remembered. Burn scars crossed one side of his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. His posture carried pain, but his eyes remained alert. Relief struck Sienna first. Betrayal followed close behind. Adrian's guilt was visible when he learned Roman had kidnapped her. Sienna made it clear that Roman had taken her by force. Yet she also acknowledged that he had protected her during the explosion. Only then did Adrian allow his brother inside. Their reunion contained no embrace. Roman stood several feet away, staring at the man he had mourned. Relief, rage, grief, and disbelief moved across his face before discipline buried them again. Adrian could barely meet his eyes. The truth emerged slowly. Every attempt Adrian made to contact Roman had been intercepted. Silas had placed loyalists inside Roman's security network, communications teams, and private offices. Adrian also feared that Roman, faced with evidence against his own family, might destroy to preserve the empire. The accusation devastated Roman because he could not dismiss it completely. Then Sienna learned the cruelest part. Adrian had deliberately placed her name inside his encrypted messages. He knew Roman would investigate her. He had used her as a living trail, hoping she would eventually lead Roman toward a conspiracy. Adrian had understood that Roman might take her. He had risked her anyway. Sienna felt the trust she had defended collapse inside her. Roman, once her captor, became the only person openly furious that she had been treated as a tool. Adrian finally revealed that the missing master ledger was hidden at an abandoned Blackwood property in eastern Washington's desert. Before they could plan the journey, alarms sounded across the sanctuary. Evelyn discovered a tracking signal buried inside Roman's wound dressing. Armed vehicles appeared around the lake, and Roman realized the device could only have been planted by Mason Reed, the guard he had trusted with his life. Roman had spent years searching for enemies beyond his family, while the man who betrayed him had stood beside him at every funeral, meeting, and execution. Gunfire shattered the sanctuary's silence as Silas's vehicles closed around the mountain lake. Roman, Sienna, Adrian, and Evelyn escaped through an abandoned evacuation tunnel hidden beneath the cabins. Behind them, Mason appeared beside Silas's men, guiding them toward the witnesses. The sight cut deeper than Roman's wound. Mason had guarded him since youth. He had stood beside him through burials, negotiations, and every violent decision that shaped the Blackwood Empire. The group divided at the far end of the tunnel. Evelyn took Adrian and the witnesses toward a protected border route, while Roman and Sienna traveled east to retrieve the master ledger before Silas could reach it. The world changed around them. Snowy peaks and rain-dark forests gave way to dry grasslands, red canyons, basalt cliffs, and a vast desert sky. By sunset, they reached an abandoned luxury ranch once owned by Roman's father. A private chapel stood beyond the empty stables. Sienna knew the ledger was buried beneath it. Adrian had chosen the ranch because Roman had refused to return after their father's death. Inside the silent house, Roman faced memories he had spent years avoiding. His childhood had been built around discipline, control, and emotional punishment. His father taught him that mercy weakened leaders. Silas reinforced that lesson while presenting himself as the only man Roman could trust. Sienna finally understood how Roman had been shaped into isolation. Roman did not use his past to excuse what he had become. He accepted that fear had made his empire easier for men like Silas to control. Before entering the chapel, he gave Sienna the chance to leave. She stayed. The evidence could protect families destroyed in the Blackwood name, and Adrian's manipulation had made the truth part of her life, whether she wanted it or not. Beneath the chapel altar, they found an underground vault. The master ledger rested inside with property records, payment trails, and the names of officials who had protected Silas. The files proved he had arranged Adrian's explosion. They also revealed that Mason's betrayal was not driven by greed alone. Silas had threatened his family and convinced him that Roman would punish weakness rather than protect it. Roman saw the consequence of ruling through fear. Even those closest to him had believed asking for help would place them in greater danger. Then Sienna found a file bearing her late father's name. He had investigated Blackwood property crimes years before dying in what she had always believed was an accident. The record showed that Silas had ordered his death. Roman's father had approved it. Sienna's connection to the Blackwoods had begun long before Adrian found her. Roman realized that the woman beside him had more reason to hate his family than he had ever imagined. Metal doors slammed shut behind them. Silas entered the vault with Mason and several armed men. He had allowed them to find the ledger because he wanted every remaining threat gathered in one place. Then Silas placed a weapon containing a single bullet in Sienna's hands and offered her freedom and revenge if she killed Roman. Sienna finally held the power to avenge her father, but pulling the trigger would make her exactly what the Blackwood family had always expected her to become. The underground vault fell silent as she raised the weapon. Silas watched with cold confidence, certain that grief would finish what fear had started. Roman stood several feet away, unarmed and bleeding, yet he made no attempt to rush her or plead for his life. He simply accepted her judgment. That wounded Sienna more deeply than resistance would have. Her father's file lay open nearby, filled with proof that Roman's family had ordered his death. But Roman had not hidden the evidence. He had chosen, again and again, to follow the truth even when it destroyed his name. Sienna pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the vault's control panel. Emergency barriers crashed down, separating Silas from several guards. Lights failed, alarms erupted, and Roman pulled Sienna through a service passage before Silas could recover. Mason followed them. His weapon remained lowered, and guilt had replaced the loyalty Roman once trusted. Mason finally revealed that Silas had threatened his younger sister. The tracking device inside Roman's bandage had been the price of keeping her alive. He had believed Roman would punish weakness rather than protect it. Roman did not demand an apology or threaten revenge. He promised Mason's sister protection without asking for loyalty in return. That single choice proved Roman had changed. Mason led them to the ranch's secure satellite system. Together, they transmitted the ledger, property records, and payment trails to Evelyn. She distributed the evidence to federal investigators, journalists, and attorneys representing the targeted communities. Sienna removed names that could expose vulnerable witnesses. Within minutes, Silas's political protection began collapsing. Roman confronted him at the canyon, overlooked as sirens approached across the desert. Silas mocked his mercy and claimed that surrendering power made him weak. Roman refused to kill him. He wanted Silas exposed, judged, and forced to face the people whose lives he had destroyed. Silas reached for a concealed weapon and aimed at Sienna. Mason stepped between them. The shot struck him, and Roman attacked before Silas could fire again. They struggled near the unstable ledge until the ground broke beneath Silas. He disappeared into the canyon. By the time Adrian and Evelyn reached the ranch, aircraft and federal vehicles were closing in. Roman understood that exposing Silas meant exposing the entire Blackwood organization. He surrendered control of its illegal operations and agreed to cooperate with investigators, knowing the decision could cost him his fortune, freedom, and reputation. Sienna respected the sacrifice, but she did not confuse accountability with forgiveness. Adrian approached her without excuses. His guilt was visible in the way he avoided asking for understanding. Sienna offered none. Roman accepted responsibility for every crime committed under his leadership, including those he had never ordered but had allowed his name to protect. Then Evelyn received a report from a canyon. Silas's body was missing. Blood and footprints led toward an abandoned airstrip. A private plane rose beyond the desert ridge as Sienna received a message containing a photograph of Adrian standing alone beside the mountain lake. The private plane disappeared beyond the desert ridge as Roman examined the photograph on Sienna's phone. The image was recent. Adrian wore the same coat he had taken from the sanctuary, and fresh bruising marked his face. Roman immediately feared Silas had captured him. Sienna looked past Adrian instead. In the lake behind him, A window reflected the slanted roof of an old boathouse beside the Blackwood estate. The photograph was not a warning from the mountains. It was a message pointing them home. They returned to the Olympic Peninsula before sunrise. Silver mist floated above the lake, while rain cleared from the cedar forest. Pale sunlight touched the mountain peaks, revealing a beauty that felt almost cruel beside everything the estate represented. Roman entered the empty house, knowing federal agents would soon seize it. The silent hallways, abandoned offices, and uncovered paintings reflected the collapse of the power he had once considered permanent. He and Sienna found Adrian inside the boathouse. He was alive and unharmed. Mason had arranged a message before being taken for medical treatment. He suspected Silas would return to destroy one final piece of evidence, an audio archive hidden beneath the boathouse floor. The recordings contained Roman's father admitting that he had approved Sienna's father's murder. They also proved Silas had manipulated both Blackwood brothers for years, feeding Roman's distrust while using Adrian's conscience against him. Silas arrived before they could leave. Injured but alive, he entered through the lakeside doors carrying fuel and a weapon. He intended to burn the archive, cross the lake, and disappear before investigators reached the estate. Beside the dark water, he tried to awaken Roman's old loyalty. He presented family power as something greater than justice and treated innocent lives as the acceptable cost of protecting the Blackwood name. Roman finally understood the truth. He had resisted. His obsession with loyalty had not saved his family. It had blinded him while betrayal grew inside it. When Silas fled toward a waiting boat, Roman protected the archive instead of pursuing revenge. The damaged vessel failed near the rocky shoreline, throwing Silas into freezing water. Roman could have allowed him to drown. Instead, he ordered the guard to rescue him. Silas would live long enough to face the families he had harmed and the law he had corrupted. Sienna delivered the archive to investigators. Adrian agreed to testify and accept responsibility for using her. The Blackwood criminal empire was dismantled, and Roman surrendered most of his wealth and influence while cooperating with the investigation. Months later, Sienna helped establish a restoration fund for the families displaced by Blackwood operations. Roman supported it with recovered assets, expecting neither forgiveness nor reward. Their bond developed through patience, accountability, and the difficult work of repairing what power had broken. Roman had kidnapped Sienna believing she caused Adrian's death. In reality, she carried the truth he feared most. Adrian had never betrayed him. His family had never been loyal, and Roman himself had helped create the system that endangered them all. They returned to the cliff-lined highway where she had been taken. This time, Sienna stood there freely while Roman walked beside her without authority or control, and the ocean opened endlessly before them. But among her father's belongings, Sienna found one final sealed Blackwood file bearing a name Roman had never heard, and Adrian recognized immediately.